Welcome to the Listen Up podcast, where we explore hearing loss, communication, connections, and health.
Hey everybody, Dr. Mark Sims here. I'm the host of the Listen Up podcast, where I feature leaders in healthcare. This episode is brought to you by Listen Up Hearing Center. I help patients to effectively treat their hearing loss so that they can remain connected to friends and family and remain independent. The reason I'm so passionate about helping patients is because I lost my brother Robbie twice. First to his hearing loss from radiation to his brain tumor, and then when he passed away. I only care for ears. I'm the ear of ENT. I've performed over 10,000 ear surgeries over the past 20 years and taken care of many more with hearing loss. I'm the founder of Listen Up Hearing Center. I'm the author of a book of the same name, Listen Up, A Physician's Guide to Effectively Treating Your Hearing Loss. If you want to learn more about that, go to listenuphearing.com. That's listenuphearing.com. I have a great guest today. I'm really excited. It's Dr. Victor Bray. He's an associate professor at Salus University, Osborne College in Audiology in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. He's had some very prestigious recognitions, which attribute to where he sits in his field. He's been named at UT Austin is where he got his PhD. And in 2010-11, he was named the Outstanding Alumnus, and he's recently got the Presidential Medal at Salus. He has a 40-plus year career in audiology, including clinical services, research and development, clinical trials of new application, and senior administration of both industry and academia, all of which have been supported by extensive presentations and publication. He began his career in direct patient care in Austin. He observed the dramatic changes in patient satisfaction that technology could deliver, specifically from hearing aid signal processing. He transitioned to working for industry, has co-developed amazingly 20 different hearing aid brands that are now sold worldwide. And now his students are lucky that he shares that experience with them at Salus University, and he's helping raise our future generation audiologists. Victor, thank you for coming on the show.
Mark, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for that kind introduction.
Oh, sure, you're welcome. So, obviously you've had an extensive experience across industry and across various parts of the audiologic world. So would you talk more about like your thinking as you transition? So you were clinical services, it sounds like, where you started. And then what was it that gave you the itch to transition and continue to transition? So I think that gives insight into the field.
Like many people, the path through audiology has not been a direct line. It's been more circuitous. I think that happens for many of us. It actually, as a high schooler working at the nursing home, as an orderly, I fell in love with geriatrics.
Sure.
And, I've always enjoyed area of servicing people who are in that community. Believe it or not, after I finished my undergraduate degree at Georgia, I joined my family's business, which was then being run by my father. And I am actually a third generation hearing aid dispenser. And family business is run by one of my brothers, who now it's third generation business. That led me to, if you're going to stay in this career, you need to get an education, get a degree in audiology. Postgraduate led me to Texas to do my fellowship. That led to an opportunity to do some further studies in the doctoral program at UT. And when I interviewed there, they asked, what do you want to do? And what I envisioned was doing clinical trials in a clinical environment in order to generate data to be able to get to consumers information to make good decisions, kind of a consumer reports for the hearing aid industry.
Sure.
And I finished up my PhD and I was thinking about going that route. But there was a major breakthrough in technology around 1990. We went from single channel analog devices to 2-channel wide dynamic range compression hearing aids. And that fundamentally changed the hearing aid benefit factor. And I said, this is exciting. I'm going to leave clinical care. And I moved to Silicon Valley, went to work for Resound back when they were an American company. And
with Dr. Perkins, when he founded it, right?
I did. I worked with Rod Perkins, and my first project was the magnetically driven ear lens. And I worked 2 years on that and developed analog products. I left there to go develop the first all digital hearing aid company. Moved to Salt Lake City. That was Sonic Innovations. I stayed with them for a dozen years and ended up as my final position as vice president and chief audiology officer, representing the company globally. And at 2008, 2009, I was ready for a change. And so I kind of walked away from industry. And I had many of my friends contact me and said, there's a program in Philadelphia that needs somebody. Would you consider interviewing for that position? And I came, I met the people here. I really liked it, moved to Philadelphia, and I've been here since then with the College of Audiology.
That's a wonderful story. So, just out of curiosity, so what was your area of research in your PhD thesis?
It was like many of us who do PhDs in this area. It's a combination of psychoacoustics and speech and hearing science. What I was doing was modeling hearing aid circuits and then trying to tie them to underlying psychoacoustic factors that would predict benefit, specifically looking at upward spread of masking and seeing if circuits which could get rid of background noise would provide differential benefit. And if we could match patients to signal processing, which I still think is a great possibility for our profession.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just always fascinating because, oftentimes what you're describing is your route kind of deviates from that, but there's usually some fundamental basic science that people are, or basic audiologic science that people are exploring. And then they kind of take it out and they've got this expertise and stuff. And so, when you've been, involved obviously with a lot of different things. So, you know, the past, obviously we know where do you see it going in terms of hearing aid technology in the future?
I think hearing aid technology is going to continue to improve every year. You have, at the top end, you've got 5 very big worldwide corporations that are focused on improving technologies, trying to show improved user benefits. The thing that fascinates me most right now is how they're expanding out of just becoming amplification devices. But certainly over the last decade, the tying of the hearing aids to a smartphone and Bluetooth communications being a hub for integration and processing of signals, and then being able to provide remote microphone technology, which really helps in noise. That has all been great. And a lot of people over the last decade have seen that. But now we're seeing hearing aids develop non-auditory features. Falls, I can detect a fall. They're looking at hearing aids that will monitor blood pressure. They're becoming health aids, and they're being tied by Bluetooth communications basically to their caretakers, quite often the adult children who are concerned about their geriatric patient. That is expanding in many, many ways to become more than just a hearing aid, but it is a health system that's being developed. Very exciting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. From a delivery point of view, you just wonder. I mean, I think it's great. We have a lot to figure out in terms of that data, what's done with the data, who has to do something with the data. I mean, how do you see that evolving?
I think there's a couple things here that's going on. One is what's immediately usable today that you can translate into benefit. What's, I think, the biggest thing that's happening is being driven by things like the Achieve trial right now. We know now very clearly the association between hearing loss and things like brain atrophy and cognitive decline. We know there's a very strong correlation. The question is, what's the relationship of causation in terms of does treating hearing loss reverse some of the brain atrophy or help some of the rewiring of the brain or slow down cognitive impairment? And if the results of the field trials that are running up now start to show that we actually have that kind of a positive effect with treatment, I think that could be the most exciting thing for audiology in decades, because it now elevates not only the services, but the products we work with into a major public health issue, fighting problems that are in our healthcare system right now.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I mean, I think, um, you know, I think if nothing else, it increases connectivity. In other words, social connectivity. So you'd be hard to argue that there's a downside to effectively treating people's hearing loss, and I think the evidence will demonstrate more and more that there is other benefits in terms of cognition and dementia and the like. I just think it's a matter of time.
Well, I think all of us are very hopeful that the results of these field trials come in. If it, and as you point out, even if they don't, there's a world of benefit we can do with helping people in communication and in becoming socially active. But if we can show physiological benefit, that's a whole new level of performance, which, gosh, that would be great for audiology. That would be great for our patients. I'm cross my fingers. I'm hoping the results come in that way. We should know in a year as these results start to come in.
Yeah, I think we're pretty spoiled. I mean, the time of getting those answers is pretty quickly. I mean, if you look at hypertension reducing heart disease, it took about 25 years to actually accumulate the data that demonstrated that you should treat high blood pressure. So it's happening a heck of a lot faster than that did in the 50s and 60s. So data collection is much faster, or study execution, I should say, is much faster.
It is. The other thing, I talked about the high technology end of the hearing aids. I think the other exciting thing is what may be a positive effect of over the counter hearing aids. Um, we have pretty good utilization of hearing aids in our country, but not as good utilization as we'd like to see. Many people with hearing aids aren't with hearing loss aren't really good candidates for hearing aids, and many people with hearing loss don't want to use hearing aids. But our penetration of people who use devices in this country is a little bit less than comparable countries because of the way that our system works here. And I hope that with over the counter hearing aids, we're able to reach, if we can reach another million people and get amplification going into them, people who can't afford to buy into the current system, then that would be just great news too. Even if it's low technology, more not as advanced signal processing, just getting auditory information up to the brain, trying to help people restore communication, that would be wonderful. So I'm hopeful on that end too.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to know, right? Because when you look at the studies will be based on appropriate treatment of the hearing loss. In other words, to see the reduction of the risk of dementia, let's say, or cognitive decline, it's all predicated on effective treatment of the hearing loss, right? And so that becomes the struggle with over the counters is if they don't actually effectively treat people's hearing loss, then people are kind of hearing less bad, not hearing well. And so then you are lowering but not mitigating people's risk. So it's kind of an interesting public health issue in terms of, do you give people an option where they can undertreat a problem?
Is a very interesting situation. We've got to watch it very carefully. There's a potential upside, there's a potential misuse. It's very important that we succeed in this. And the role of audiologists is very important because while the OTC rules are very clear that people can purchase these amplification systems, there are restrictions on them in terms of what they can do. Um, you aren't required to seek help, but there is no prohibition against seeking help. And many of the systems that are available have support systems in them. And we're trying to get the message as audiologists that if you do choose the path to go get over the counter hearing aids, great. But if you come to see somebody in the audiology community, we can probably help you get more benefit from the hearing aids because this is our area of expertise and we have the services to draw maximum benefit. So we're hoping that people will opt into the systems where they do pick up some services as well as picking up devices. Both of them are important.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting what that looks like. I mean, I don't have an answer, but it'll be interesting to see how that as a delivery model, what that exactly looks like. I'm not sure anybody's figured that out.
People are working on it. There's lots of things coming out. So, we've been at it a few months now. Um, the early indicators are that some of the early adopters are younger people And interestingly, they're perhaps looking for better hearing in social situations, but that might be the early adopter group. And if so, if we get to people earlier and they're able to use it in social situations, yes.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, we'll just see. Obviously, there's other stuff to come out. Return rates, right? Obviously, I mean, one of the things that a lot of devices don't have is actually wear rates, right? So when you look at some of the direct-to-consumer devices that have been around for quite some time, some of them have been very successful public offerings. They don't really actually tell you. They don't know how many of their users are actually wearing them. They know how many they've shipped out the door and gotten paid for it, but they don't actually know how many people are wearing.
And I think we'll see some new players come into the marketplace in this new opportunity. But we're going to see some other people who come into it, they look at it, and they decide it doesn't fit their particular way of doing business, and they're going to exit.
Well, Bose has come and gone.
Yeah, Bose got in. I mean, we were all very excited, and then they got out. And as Sony's come in, so I'm glad people are looking and trying, and they'll give it a go, and they'll make a business decision about whether or not it works for them, and things will sort out over time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, obviously, we need more data and we need more experience, so it will be a matter of time. One of the other areas that that you talked about is audiologic workforce. In terms of what type of work have you done in that space?
Uh, um, I am quite concerned about the profession, the growth of the profession, and this really came about by my leaving industry and coming here to Salus University. Frankly, when I was in industry, um, my customers were hearing aid specialists. They were audiologists around the world. Some are bachelor's degrees, some are master's degrees. There were emerging doctoral degrees here. In Scandinavia, they were physicians first and then audiologists second. As long as they were all the same to me in terms of customers. But when I came here, I kind of took in under responsibility a program that has produced over a quarter of the AUD degree holders in the country and
Wow.
around the world. And so I became invested in what are we producing and what is their future. And I needed to know that they were on a good path. 2016, 2017, I approached a colleague, Amin Amlani, who I admire his work a great deal. And I asked him, would you look at this with me? And what we've been doing, everybody has an opinion about this. And what we've been trying to do is to put some rigor to what is actually going on in the audiology community, to put numbers to it, to see if there is a problem. And then maybe if there's a problem, can we use the data to try to figure out where to go? And Dr. Amlani and I are continuing our work to quantify, but to put numbers on the audiology profession. The tactic we're using is we're looking at areas that describe a profession, and then we're benchmarking to the surrounding professions to see how are they performing in these areas. So workforce, how fast is the audiology workforce growing? And how does that compare to similar professions?
That's a
What,
great question. So
yeah,
how fast is it
okay.
growing? And how does it compare to other professions?
Not good, not good. The paper we just published in Audiology Practices showed that the using professions that are very similar to ours, so optometry, speech language pathology, physical therapy, occupational therapy, these professions over the last 20 years have grown their workforce by between 70 and 75% collectively. And if you go back 20 years ago, we had 13,000 audiologists in our workforce. If
Yeah.
we grow at the same level, we would have over 20,000 audiologists in our workforce. And we have maybe 14,000 audiologists that show up in the workforce. So our growth rate is barely matching the population's growth rate, and it's not matching the graying of America. That's a real concern when the responsibility of our profession is to meet the needs of these people. I don't know how we're going to meet it in the current model in which we practice.
Do you think some of it's an attrition issue that people leave?
That's the problem. That's the question we want to answer right now. So when you look at the workforce models, what's the input? So, and then what are you losing? What hasn't been rigorously analyzed is what is the input rate in terms of graduates with AUD degrees into our profession benchmarked against the other professions? So
Sure.
you look at the other professions, what percentage of their workforce do they graduate every year in order to maintain their growth? We don't know what that answer is. I will know that answer in 60 days.
Oh, good.
And Amin and I will be presenting that data. If our input pipeline is the same as the other professions, then yes, it's a attrition, retirement, and retention problem. On the other hand, if the pipeline is too small, then we know how to address that. It may very well be a combination of the two. But let's put some numbers on it. Let's make, instead of a qualitative, let's do a quantitative analysis, which is why I mean.
Do you know what number work for industry? I mean, it just seems there's a ton of audiology in industry, which pulls them away from practice.
There are a lot, but I don't know how many there are. But there are a lot of audiologists, and frankly, if you are an audiologist, it is one of the most fascinating areas to go and work, because the work is challenging, it's invigorating, it's stimulating. Quite often, in terms of technology and what's going on, you're a couple of years ahead of where the market is. You're always at that leading edge, so it's a very stimulating environment. I love my time there in industry, and they attract great people.
Yeah, the thing is, we need people in the trenches taking care of the people, right? I mean, that's the issue. How do we get the care to the people?
We do need them, and industry has a way of
Seducing them away.
the best and the brightest and pulling them in to work, which they need, because you're in the environment where you have to create.
Yeah. So how many graduates does your program put out a year?
Through our on-campus program, we graduate between around 30 per year, which is large for an audiology program.
Big program, yeah.
Now, a typical audiology program is a small group, it's a small cohort who's part of a very large communication sciences and disorders program. So 90% of it is speech language pathology. And then they have this liaison department that is audiology. We're not of that typical mold. Salus formerly was the Pennsylvania College of Optometry, which is just celebrating its 100th year anniversary. The model here is that optometry is a professional school 4-year doctoral program, and it's autonomous. And so when I came here as dean back in 2009, I was implementing the model Dr. George Osborne put in place. And Dr. Osborne had been trained as a dentist, who then through T&J crossed over into audiology and put this program in place. His vision was dentistry professional school, and he was able to put it here because there was an optometry professional school. So our model is large class size, large faculty, big laboratories, on-campus clinic. So we're a little bit of an odd duck. It's a very fun experiment here.
So more scale, essentially, from a practical point of view, you're doing more scale, right? You're teaching the class, instead of teaching it to 8 to 10, you're teaching it to 30, or maybe even more, because there are other people in allied professions who might take the classes as well.
And we would like to see more audiology programs step up and transition to be able to handle larger class sizes. We've proven it can be done, and we hope that more programs will do it.
Does your challenge clinical rotations? as compared to the didactics, or?
For us, fortunately, it's not a problem. It's not clinical rotation. We've got 5 million people in our Philadelphia area. And we place students up in New York City, all the way down through Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, all through Eastern Pennsylvania. We're very fortunate that we have a very rich medical environment, large population base, and we're able to do it. Granted, there are programs who are not in population centers, but they can do that. Now, nationally, we place our graduates in their fourth year externship all over the country, and they excel wherever they go, and we're very happy with that.
That's great. I mean, it's all about the product, right? And what they do and how they do after they leave the proverbial nest, right?
Yes.
How many faculty do you have? That's a big program. It must be a lot. I mean,
We've got about
it's
yeah,
not your
we've
volunteer.
got in terms of on campus, we've got a dozen. In terms of adjuncts who are assisting in our on-campus program, there's probably another 10. We also run an online program that does AUD programs internationally and master's programs internationally. We probably have another 40 adjunct faculty who are affiliated with those programs as a worldwide campus.
That's great. That's great. So, no, I mean, I really appreciate the work you're doing, and I'm worried about that workforce as well, because I'm just not sure who's going to do the diagnostics and the therapeutics on an audiologic side going forward. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully, you guys can figure that out.
Well, we hope so. I think the gut feeling that Amin and I have is we need to make the profession ultimately more rewarding as a career choice. And can we get the profession to agree that it needs to be more rewarding? And then through advocacy, what can we do to make it more rewarding? How can we change our training programs so that the audiologists can do more? That I think that's the challenge of the future leadership, the future educators, all of us who are tied in trying to position the profession for growth.
Yeah, I think it's been quite a challenge, right? So some of your colleagues are in the hearing aid dispensing world and will give away an audiogram for free, and then other people, it's like their bread and butter remunerative output. And so even within the audiologic community, how things are valued becomes very challenging to get a consensus.
It is, and you have this intersection of a medical model, which is the environment which I live, and then you have my brother, the audiologist, who runs our family business. His is a business model, and he's a retailer of hearing aids. It's very clear that's what he does. I mean, that's his business. It's been my family's business for 75 years, and audiology is wrestling between this doctor medical model, hearing aid salesperson, and it's tough being in that position to try to rectify those two streams, especially when you're trying to figure out how you're going to do revenue recognition in today's environment.
Yeah, I think it's really challenging. Just basically based on some of the remuneration of what audiologists do to support some of the salary or remuneration expectations is very, very challenging. I mean, I tell audiologists, unfortunately, you cannot audiogram yourself into prosperity, meaning you cannot just do audiograms and get the type of remuneration they're looking for, which is, it's tough because that is kind of the, I mean, you do a lot more, but that's kind of like the base intellectual output of audiology is the comprehensive diagnostic audiologic evaluation. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot more to it, but if you were to just do that, 20 minutes each, 8 hours a day, even there, it'd be pretty hard to get remunerated well enough to meet people's expectations.
Yes, and that's what doctors in the healthcare system don't do technical work like that. So how do we transition to a new degree status? How do we supervise people and machines who can churn out this information? How do we look at the results through a workforce who works for us and then identify, okay, this is good, this is good, there's red flags here. I need to see this patient. I need to use my high level skills. I need to go back, reevaluate, and I need to partner with someone else, perhaps in medicine, because this is a complex environment. That's where I would like to see the profession growing.
So who does that person look like? I mean, who I totally agree with you. I think that there's going to need to be the equivalent of an audiology extender.
Yes.
The question is what does that look like, and who gives permission for that to exist?
And the extenders can come in two forms, three forms. There are audiology assistants who can do very low level skill.
Diagnostics in their skill set.
Right.
They're not defined as diagnostics, right?
Right. But there are hearing aid specialists who do a very good job of working up the standard patient and also, frankly, doing a good job of fitting non-complex hearing aid situations.
Sure.
That's another extender. And then there are machines. There are machines that can do audiometric testing. And we widely use them in industrial audiology. There's no reason they can't be brought into the clinical environment. Given that audiology doesn't have the manpower to fill all of these roles ourselves, the only natural thing to do is, and I like your extenders. I mean, that's the way it is. How can you extend what you do by bringing these people in to work as a team that you supervise? I think that's the future of the profession.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, there was a push for this. So I don't want to get into the high-level otolaryngologic, audiologic, economic, political, medical issues. But there was a push, one, to have automated audiograms, and that was kind of, it was the remuneration didn't follow. And then the other thing that we had were kind of these technicians who could do audiograms. And I think actually that population needs to probably be grown, but I think there's resistance within the audiologic community to do that.
Oh, absolutely. I was on the front end of the machine part of it.
What was that called? There was that automated audiogram that came out of Texas, right?
Yep. And the company I was with in Salt Lake, we bought that company and we brought it to market, a model that was to put this automated audiometry into facilities, not ENT facilities.
No, but it was great for follow-ups, especially, right? Once you had a baseline audiogram, you're not really looking to diagnose their hearing loss. You're looking for shifts or changes. That's where it was really effective.
And yes, I was on the front line of that as the audiology representative, our company, saying this is a tool that we need to use. And I met head on very strong resistance in the audiology community.
I hope you had your football helmet on.
We will not be replaced by machines.
Right.
Now, that was 15 years ago. And we still, we even have proportionally even less number of audiologists
compared to the population of need. Yes, I agree.
So it's time to bring the discussion back.
Yeah, well, the answer is probably the miscommunication was you're absolutely right. You won't be replaced by machines. You're just thinking what you do is not the right context, and what the machine does is not if you think all you do is audiograms, then you're in trouble. Right. I think that's probably an answer that both you and I are concurrent. So it's an interesting, definitely an interesting issue, and I think it's in the forefront. I'm in Phoenix. We have an audiologic workforce shortage here, and I don't think I'm speaking for one place. I have many colleagues who are missing them, and I think part of it's also COVID kind of left to a larger. I don't know if your numbers have that, but I think there was a higher attrition. There were some people who kind of maybe were on the cusp of retiring, or kind of were doing kind of chill jobs, if that makes sense. And then COVID came, they decided, okay, I'm out. We saw that in medicine, certainly.
Well, there's my colleagues who are in private practice. Many of them are struggling and trying to find people to come to work for them. They have they have the work to do, they can't find the professionals to come and do the work.
Yeah, I'm at their Northern California practice, two dispensing audiologists, very busy. They've had an open position for a third dispensing audiologist since early 2021. So, I mean, yeah, it's
looking for an audiologist and he can't find one to come work for him.
Wait a second. He has a friend who I'm talking to right now who graduates 20, 30 of them a year. You can't get the
since I'm down there.
Track. You can't even get you, right? They can't get the inside track. So, well, this is great. And I think this is a really interesting, fascinating, and a problem that, I mean, obviously I'm to some extent on the outside, but I'm really interested in hearing health and how that's going to be delivered. And I think the shortage of audiologists is a huge problem that, perhaps you and I will be revisiting another time when it becomes a little bit more solidified within the profession. I'm not sure that your profession is going to be able to be asked permission to allow what happened.
No, but we will. We do need to make some data-informed decisions and get a consensus about what we're going to do. And
I agree. I'm not saying I don't want it to happen. I'm just not sure it will happen if you're too resistant, because the need is just going up and up and up.
Absolutely.
So, Victor, this has been a great conversation. What is your favorite sound?
My favorite sound is a storm. When a storm comes to town, I leave my house and I go outside. I love the sounds, the energy, the wind, the rain, the lightning, the thunder, all of that stimulation. The controlled chaos of a storm to me is very invigorating. And I really do like that environment.
So, having grown up in Philadelphia, you must like August, because that's when the good thunderstorms are. So in Philadelphia, we call them thunder and lightning storms. In Arizona, we call them monsoons, although they are very similar, but it's just a more dramatic name for a big thunderstorm.
They're wonderful. They're a wonderful experience to have and to go out and experience instead of to hide from.
No, that's great. For the listeners, this is Dr. Victor Bray from Salus University. If people wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that? LinkedIn, right?
Well, certainly you can get a hold of me through LinkedIn if you have an account there. My work email address is vbray, VBRAY, at salus, salus.edu. My personal email, if people want to contact me that way, is victorbrayusa@gmail.com.
That's great. Easy enough. It's alliterative. So that's really nice. So everybody, again, this has been a great conversation. We talked a little bit about hearing aid technology and its evolution. And then we talked about the audiologic workforce and delivering care, the needs of the American population ahead. And this has been with Dr. Victor Bray. It's been a fascinating, and he's running a pretty large audiologic program in Philadelphia. That's where I'm from. And I know, actually, I grew up near Elkins Park. So, this is great to have a conversation with you. Thank you so much for coming on this show.
It's been a pleasure talking with you, Mark. And I've really enjoyed watching your podcast, and please keep up the good work.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen Up podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get updates on future episodes.